everybody, it's Melissa from Living a Creative Life, and I have a special treat today. I have an inspiring subscriber interview with someone who's a huge inspiration to me, Susan Falcone of poweringpossible.com. And Susan, when did we meet? We met a year or two ago?
Yeah, about a year and a half ago, maybe on Skype. I mean on Twitter.
On Twitter, yeah, we met on Twitter, and then we've run into each other in various different places, and I got to take a fantastic class that Susan gave several months ago called Clearing the Chaos. Was that what it was called?
Right.
Oh, it was fantastic, a 4-week class. And Susan has been a tremendous inspiration to me. You are the reason why self-compassion is one of my words for 2012. So Susan has a really inspiring story, and when I asked her if she would be willing to be part of my ongoing Inspiring Subscriber project, her response was very intriguing to me. I don't know if you remember this, Susan, but she wrote that, and I'm going to quote a little bit. "I think maybe I'm not a great fit for this interview," you wrote. "Creative work product is not something that's a central part of my life right now, so I don't have any work to share." And then she went on to talk about moving from a creative job that zapped her creativity, corporate graphic design, and letting go of an emotional attachment to being a designer and creating new stuff. And that really intrigued me. And my intention for these interviews is not to showcase people who are making any particular kind of creative expression,
Right.
art or writing or anything like that. What I'm really interested in is, what does it mean to live a creative life? What does it mean to each person individually, and how are you doing that, and how are you getting past the things that get in the way of you doing that?
Yeah.
So I thought that your story would be such a perfect fit, contrary to your original concern about it. So tell me, how are you living a creative life right now, Susan? How are you evolving? How are you following what I like to call your evolving bliss?
That's an interesting question. It's changed. It's really changed over the years, especially in the last 3 years, because I actually did a major career transition from, I've been a graphic designer for about 18 years, and high-end, corporate, sought after. I had a lot of identity wrapped up in, I'm a designer, and I'm a certain kind of designer, and so my identity was really wrapped up in that from art school forward. Since then, going back many, many years now. But I got really burnt out in that career, and there wasn't. What happened was, it's a creative job where people are saying, "Oh, you're so lucky you get to design stuff all day," but what was really happening is you're designing around someone else's branding, you're designing around someone else's idea, and so within that context, a lot of your creative juices really get squashed.
Yeah.
And so over time, it just became less and less and less appealing to me, and more work. It's a job, which is okay, but when you're looking to get your creative expression from that place and not really anywhere else, it was definitely taking a huge toll on me. And it took me really 10 years to get out of it, because you keep thinking it does changes, it evolves, and all kinds of different things happen. So, right now, today, I moved into a career where I'm doing coaching and consulting and mentoring. And that creative process for me, it's not about making something beautiful on paper. It's about self-expression. So that can come out in, as you know, a bazillion different ways.
Absolutely.
And I think for me right now, most of it is writing. I write a lot, and I've started to really express my, what's going on in my life through that writing, where that was something I was holding back a lot before, just around my health and some other things. And so there's the creative expression of actually doing the writing, but then there's that self-expression of seeing what's coming out of the writing and following those breadcrumbs, I call it. You know, it's like those little things in your life that are showing up, that are taking you somewhere, but you don't really know where they're taking you. You just know there's a trail, right?
That's such a great metaphor for it.
Yeah. And so, and to really honor, like, you know, a lot of this stuff, it feels hard. Like you're going through this practice of self-compassion. To me, I've taken that as a really creative process. It's not this like self-flagellation. I'm going to be kind to myself, you know. That's not really, it's counterproductive, right? And so how can I look at this in a more creative way so that it feels good to me, and it's not only taking me down this path, but it's nourishing me creatively along the way.
Yeah.
Right? And so self-compassion is a great place to start with that. That's something I practice in my life every day, and it shows up differently every day. And so there's creativity in how I choose to approach it. There's creativity in how I choose to work with it in my life. And then it comes out through different forms of self-expression, through what I'm doing on a daily basis, you know, how much I'm allowing myself to be creative, and where those things are showing up in my life. So I would say right now, I feel really strongly around personal development as a creative process. And within that, I do use writing to help, like I said, sort of draw those things out that need to come to the surface.
Yeah. I like the way you put that, because that's, as you were talking about that strikes such a chord in me. I feel like as I sort of shift the pots around on my own stove, you know, sometimes I was spending more time making visual art or making music or writing or whatever, but it's all sort of part of this larger path of self-knowledge, self-expression in general, and learning about myself. And I use my writing as in the same way to really like figure out my thinking and my feeling about particular topics and stuff. Yeah. And I also totally resonate with the experience of doing work where you're creating, you're being highly, highly creative, but it's all in service of somebody else's vision. Yeah. And somebody else's, you know, grand scheme. And it's hard to explain sometimes to people who have other kinds of, you know, who do other kinds of work, how that can be very quashing of your own, you know, creative spirit. It's really, it's quite an interesting experience having been through it.
You know, one of the things too is the attachment to, you know, we were talking earlier, like I went through 4 years of art school. I graduated third in my class in art school. That was like huge. That was probably like one of the biggest achievements of my life. You know, it's like I had a lot of wrapped up in the identity of how creativity was showing up in my life, which is one of the reasons it took me so long to work my way out of a career that was sort of killing my creativity. Yeah. Because there was such a personal association with designer. Totally. You know, there was just, that's who I was. And also I was getting that from my peers. It's like, well, you don't want to get out of this. I mean, what, you know, how are you going to express yourself and how are you going to be creative? And I kept saying, I don't need that piece. And I can do that, you know, I can do it on the side if I want, or however I choose to have that show up in my life. But it was really separating from that identity of what that creative spirit was and how it was showing up. Took a long time. And
I'm wondering, like, when you first got into that field, that identity was, if your experience was anything like mine, when I got into a couple of different creative fields, essentially dance and then later calligraphy and art, it took me a long time to be able to really embrace the identity as a dancer and then later as an artist, and then letting go of that. In both cases, I've had to let go of that identity or a certain manifestation of that identity, which has been really, really hard because, as you say, so much of who you are gets wrapped up in that, right? And there's a lot of value judgments around it from your peers and from, I mean, when I was a dancer, it was like non-dancers, I mean, they're civilians.
Yeah. It's very
to be a
the ego
civilian.
associated with it. You don't really realize you're doing it, but I hate to use the term superiority, but you just
totally there. Yeah.
I don't believe I acted like that, but you have this sense of, like I said, I'm a designer.
Right.
Like I laugh at it now; it's ridiculous. But actually, going back to coming right out of school, where you kind of have that birthplace of creativity, where the sky's the limit. All you're really doing in art school is experimenting, And I had so much like excitement and fervor for design for several years when I came out of school while I was building my career. And then as I peaked in my career, it was also at the point where they were pushing me so hard and you're going into burnout phase at the same time. So here you are like peaking at your career and not feeling at all creative and not inspired and drudgery and all that kind of stuff happening. So
yeah,
it was confusing.
Really confusing. And then you had a very intense experience with facing a big stumbling block as well. Can you talk a little bit about that? What the resistances or the serious challenges that you faced in your own creative path in your life?
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing that hit me, I have several autoimmune diseases, and I've had them my whole life, but as I've gotten older, they get worse and worse and worse. And as much as I try to control it, there's only so much I can do. It's treatment resistant, and so I suffer from severe chronic fatigue syndrome that is treatment resistant. And so through that process, I'm peaking in my career. I'm hitting the most stress that I've ever had, and in that process, my body is responding by shutting down and the not being able to. I would go to work and then I'd come home and just like pass out. And wow. I was working so much and like trying to catch up on sleep on the weekends. And so then there was nothing else besides working and sleeping, and that's when I was working for somebody else. And then I decided to go out on my own 12 years ago and build a business that way, which, you have more control. I guess I could take a nap in the middle of the day, but you're working more, right? So there was this whole other thing that happened. But essentially what happened was a few years ago, I was building business and working too much, way too much, and I really took my body to the next level of not being able to function as well as it could. And so what I've had to deal with over the last 10 years of my life is watching my body completely. It's sort of like a wind-up toy that's slowing down. Mm. And so when the fatigue is so insidious and you feel that exhaustion all the time, in that place of exhaustion is a real lack of creativity. Yeah. Right? And I'm sure that you've heard we talk about this with people all the time, is when I feel good, I feel more creative. When I create space for feeling good, my creativity just like skyrockets. So, then I'm in this position where I'm dealing with post-burnout, not even being able to recover back to where I was, and learning then how to deal with this physical limitations that have been handed to me and the stress that comes with losing some of your capacity to physically function. That can like zap the creativity right out of you too.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right. So then I spent, a lot of time, a couple of years in real like place of resentment and anger over that, which is not going to help your creativity at all. And that's where I said I really had to get creative. I had to get creative on a spiritual level, on a personal level, on a relationship level, and really get clear with myself. How do I want to go through this process? Because I don't have a choice of how to go through it. What's the most creative, self-compassionate way I can do that? And so here we are.
So what are some of the things that you've learned that have been really helpful in getting you past the helping you navigate that challenging road?
I've realized that as much as I want to expect other people to understand how I feel, they're never going to really be able to understand it. And so I can't expect that. And so I have spent a lot of time and done a lot of inner work on expectations, because it's not just our own expectations of ourself. I've had to reel in my own expectations of myself. We say, okay, this is a different you than you thought you were. And you know what? We all deal with this, whether it's a health issue or not. You know, we're changing and growing throughout our lives, and different circumstances present themselves, and all of a sudden you find yourself sort of in a different place than you expected to be.
Mm-hmm.
And you can look at that with extreme disappointment, and you can let your expectations run away and say, you know, this isn't what I expected. I don't deserve this. This isn't right for me. Or you can start to try and embrace what you're being handed and what it's teaching you and how it's helping you to move to where the next breadcrumb is taking you.
Yeah.
So it's really, a lot of it is perspective, mindset, you know, really stopping yourself from the rumination of, I wish I could, I can't, why can't I do this? I should be able to do this. I'm angry that my circumstances aren't optimal and they're not what I expected, and I don't have this fairy tale idea of a life that I had when I was 6. So it's expectations. And then in that, I really had to learn to practice self-compassion, which to me is self-kindness. It's kindness to myself. And it's doing it in a way that's gentle and not beating yourself up when you're not kind to yourself.
That would sort of defeat the purpose.
You know, and we all struggle so much with treating ourselves as well as we treat others.
Mm-hmm.
And you're practicing this too, and when you get it, it clicks. And it becomes easier, and you can see the benefits of it. And, you know, do I stumble? I stumble all the time. But I've learned to catch myself. Even to say, when I'm dealing with a client, what does she need right now? I ask myself, what do you need right now? Reel it in. Reel in all the emotion. What do you really need right now? Let's get to the core of this fast, because, you know, we don't have time to waste feeling like crap. You know?
Yeah.
So what do I really need right now? And be honest with yourself. And therein is where that creativity process starts over again. Because you're allowing yourself to not feed into whatever that negative emotion is. And you may not feel like being positive or being grateful or being open to whatever else is out there that you're afraid of. But you can use your creative expression to help foster that. And it kind of it lessens the blow of all that fear that's around us all the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think what you were talking about regarding the self-compassion, I think so much of it really comes down to kind of an awareness of that, oh yes, I am a being who deserves compassionate treatment from myself.
Yeah.
And that's not something that a lot of us really kind of grew up being trained in how to do, right? So it's really a new way of thinking. It's a real mindset shift. And when you can make that shift, as you say, yeah, of course we all stumble all the time, but there's a really, like, a sea change difference between walking around in sort of unconsciousness around self-compassion and that you are a being who deserves to be treated well by yourself, and making that shift over. So can you talk about what kind of started that shift for you? Was it the health issues, or did you have sort of a revelatory experience?
Yes. Yes, you just said it. I was in the midst of, was it 2010? I was in the midst of transitioning out of design, building 2 businesses at once, working 100 hours a week. That was the year I let myself burn out. I know you know. I know you know. And doing it under the guise of, when I get done, it's done, it'll be done soon. It will be done soon. It will be done soon. Then I can rest. Then I can relax. Then I can, you know. So I will choose to beat myself up because I can rest later.
Right.
You know, we get into it. You know, it comes from a genuine place of wanting to create and wanting to serve. But then we kind of snowball into this too much, too fast. high expectations, probably somewhat unrealistic. And I had lived a full year of pretty much January to January like that. And in August, in the middle of that year, I had flown out. I'm on the East Coast, and I had flown out to California to a conference, to do a conference. And so here I am, like, suffering from extreme exhaustion, killing myself with work, flying out, changing time zones is like a huge issue for a lot of people, and for me even more so. I was exhausted, and I think I got into this really somewhat altered state because I spent a couple days at the conference, and you know those conferences are so much energy, there's so much going on. It's like that itself can drain you in a positive way. So I'm laying in bed in this strange hotel in the middle of the night. I get up to pee. This is the God's honest truth. This is too much information, but can I get up to pee? I'm sitting on the toilet in the middle of the night, and I had this, I don't know why it came then, I don't know why, but I just realized I was being so mean to myself. And it like gives me chills thinking about it because it was just like, why am I treating myself like this? Why? And I had done some energy work too around this, really kind of separating myself and looking at myself in the third person and saying, wow, you're a cool person and you're worthy of being kind to, and I want to treat you really well. And I could totally do that if you're a different person. But when it's you, it's just, for some reason, it's just harder for us to learn that gentleness and kindness and compassion. And so I just completely broke down, and I told myself, like, you're hurting yourself and you don't deserve to hurt yourself. You're a beautiful person. You're trying to serve people. You're helping a lot of people, and you're killing yourself in the process. Yeah. And who is that serving? And so, obviously, I said I went January to January with this behavior of, working too much. But I had that moment. I wasn't quite ready to step into it. But that was that pivotal moment. And so September came, October came, and the fall came. And by December, I said, that's it. It is done. December 31st and January 1st, I am treating myself with kindness. And wow. And I stuck to it. And I cut my work hours back to 40 hours or less. I learned to practice self-compassion in a way that when I realized, some of the stuff you've been talking about on your blog, which is extending that boundary of, well, I see I'm only going to work until 6 o'clock, but I just got to get this thing done. Then it's 7, and I just got to get it done. It's almost done. And catching yourself in those moments and saying, no, you need to go for a walk, or you need to go do something else and not be here. And by not doing that, you're choosing to hurt yourself.
Right.
So you hit the nail on the head, is that it is 100% awareness, because you can create all the boundaries that you want, but if you're not willing to honor them, you're not going to make any progress.
So absolutely true. Oh my God. And the thing that I found the most challenging is continuing to honor and maintain those boundaries, because it's so easy to slip just a little bit, just a little bit, just a little bit, just a little bit, and then boom, all of a sudden you're, like my great bedtime experiment, 11 p.m., lights out, and if I'm not careful, it would turn into 2 a.m. again in about 3 nights, Yeah.
And you know what I think, too, is interesting, because I think sometimes we're creating boundaries with good intentions, but they're not always the best fit. And so I'm not saying this was in your case, but we're kind of forcing ourselves into, like, the wrong box. And so for me, for example, I'm a night person, too, because it's typical with chronic fatigue. You can't sleep, and then you're not good in the morning. So I can understand that working till 2 a.m. thing. That's sort of me, too, and I get that. But for me, I can say, maybe I can't get to bed at 11, but I'm going to stop working at 11.
Right.
And knowing I can't fall asleep till after 2 is 11 to 2, I'm not working. And that's something that I've really, I try to stop working before that, but, Just as an example, because I think sometimes we set boundaries that aren't, like I said, aren't necessarily a good fit. They might be a good fit for somebody else, but we need to really look at, if it's not working, is it that we're not willing to do what needs to be done, or is it wasn't a good fit?
Yeah, and is there a way that you can maybe tweak it a little bit to make it a good fit?
Right. Yeah.
And I think one of the really challenging things for people like us who are creative entrepreneurs is reconciling the slowing down and being self-compassionate and not working 100 hours a week with continuing to grow and build a business. So can you talk about that from your perspective on how did that work for you? I mean, I think, people might be watching this and going, oh my God, but if I slow down, I'm never going to make any money,
Yeah. Well, okay, so if you slow down, here's where reality and expectations set in. It's going to be a slower process.
Right.
Okay, so you may not do that launch in 6 weeks. It may be 12 weeks.
Right.
And you need to look at what it's worth to you and what you're willing to sacrifice for that to happen. Are you willing, if you know yourself and you know you're going to kill yourself over the next 6 weeks, and then you have to deliver something beyond that, you're going weeks and weeks and weeks out, instead of choosing is the operative word here, a more relaxed pace that allows you to at least enjoy the process too.
Right.
Right? Because what we do, it's like we smash everything into this timeline, and then we end up, by the time we're ready to deliver whatever it is, whether it's a class or it's a painting or a project or whatever, we hate it by the time we're ready to deliver it.
Or we hate ourselves and we don't hate it, right?
Yeah. There's not a whole lot of gentleness and kindness in that scenario. So you have to be realistic and say, if I'm going to be kinder to myself, I'm going to work less. Some things need to change. And in that is some of these timelines need to elongate. And so the other thing really cool is Tara Rodden Robinson. She's a productivity coach. We were just talking about this as well. And is to learn how to be more efficient with your time. Because a lot of times, I think most of us at this point can admit to we're screwing around on Facebook or Twitter or getting sidetracked or surfing the web, kind of letting things run away with us, or the other way around. We're running away with certain things that are catching our eye, and you're not really being super efficient with your time. So that's another thing to reel in. It's not just that you need to extend those timelines. Maybe you don't need to double the length of time it's going to take you so you can work half as much, but you also want to be more disciplined with how you're using your time. And these are stuff, this is stuff we all struggle with. Like, everybody is into time management, but we're all not always willing to be disciplined with our time. You can't have it both ways,
Well, the other thing that I think is a big issue, at least it is for me, is thinking about, okay, like I've made the decision to slow down. I've made the decision that I don't want to be the stress the hell out entrepreneur anymore. I want to be the peaceful entrepreneur, right? I just took a class with the way of the peaceful entrepreneur.
For stress the hell out entrepreneur? I'm not sure.
I don't want to be a stress the hell out entrepreneur. So, but one of the many challenges that we face when intending to go on this more self-compassionate path with whatever wonderful creative amazingness we're bringing out into the world is all around us, is this sort of soup and this general expectation and judgments from people in our circle or people that we see and admire and tend to, if you're me, compare yourself to, et cetera, who are all, they seem to be going 1,000,000 miles a minute. And, it's very hard to feel okay about slowing down to, 3 miles an hour walking pace when
you see everybody else zooming by. Right.
Right. It's a challenge. So has that been something that you, how have you dealt with that?
I come back to the reason why I chose self-compassion. And that is because I love myself enough to not do that to myself again.
Yeah.
Period. It's really interesting because on one hand you're saying, I'm watching all these other people zoom by me, and I'm admiring their work, but you don't necessarily know what's going on in their life, right?
Right.
And on the other hand, you could say, I can really admire somebody who's practicing self-compassion, right? So you can be that person, though. We can be that person as I choose self-compassion. I choose kindness. I choose a realistic pace for my work. And other people are going to admire you for that. You know?
That's true.
That's
yeah.
another one of those mindset shifts is, do you need to be going where that other person is going at this time? You may want to, and that expectation is not necessarily moving you forward because you're killing yourself in the process of moving forward, and is it being effective?
Right.
So you may move forward this 6 months, and then you're going to, drop dead for the next 6 months.
Right. Exactly.
So, no, but it's it's kind of using silly generalizations, but the truth is when you work that at that pace for long enough, you are killing your creativity. I have seen it in myself. I've seen it over and over and over. And you need space. You need rest. You need other nourishment in your life to feed that. And when you're working at such a crazy pace, you're killing it. You're killing it.
Absolutely.
So really go back to what are you trying to accomplish here, and what's the big picture? And really, I think you need to look within and check within yourself. And I know it's easy to compare, and it can be frustrating, but it's not really your concern what everybody else is doing. It's their thing.
Absolutely. I think also what you were just saying about being a model, for me, as somebody who has my top core value is making a difference.
Yeah.
So that can be very helpful for me to come back to that and notice that when I choose self-compassion for myself, when I choose to be realistic and know that everything takes 7 times longer than I think. So instead of allowing an hour to do X, whatever X is, I really need to allow 7 hours.
Yeah.
And really, I'm going to take I'm taking a walk after our interview. That's my plan for the afternoon. Is I'm going out by the bay and I'm going to take a walk. When I allow space for that, part of what I'm doing, aside from caring for myself, is making a difference by modeling that kind of self-compassion, that kind of treatment for other people. Yeah. So, we all have to figure out, this is like a life coaching skill, right? We all have to figure out what our motivators are. And when you know what those are, if you know that your motivator is making a difference, that can help you figure out what to do.
It's knowing what it is, and it's trusting it. I come back over and over again to trust the process because it works. And when you feel yourself veering out of that, you're feeling it in your body. You're feeling overwhelmed. You're feeling frustration. You're feeling lack of creativity. However you're feeling, I really try to help people to really get clear on what are you feeling when you're feeling overwhelmed, or when you're feeling crappy, or you're not feeling creative, or you're not feeling fulfilled, or what is happening? Because we know what that feels like. What feels better, going for a walk on the bay, or feeling overwhelmed and creative and frustrated and not good enough and not fast enough and all that stuff,
Yeah.
That's how I do it.
Wow.
Come back to what feels as good as possible, because I've had to do this, like I said earlier. I've had an extreme situation where my body is so tuned into every little bit of stress, whether it's emotional, whether it's a relationship, it's work, it's a client, it's movement, literally physical movement. So I have had to get so clear on where those triggers are coming from, so I can try to keep that pace as steady as possible.
Yeah.
And so this is one of those situations where I didn't expect to be here. I don't particularly enjoy this health issue that I have, but it has taught me so much invaluable stuff that if I can pass on those tools and those gifts for somebody to use in a way that works for them, then I'm grateful for that. Like I said, I don't love having a health issue, but I'm so grateful for the lessons. And it's not fair to yourself to not honor what the stuff is teaching us and to just blow past it,
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's self-compassion in there too.
Well, your story and what you have brought out to the world as a result of the challenge that you've been facing in your life have been incredibly life-changing for me.
Thank you.
So, bless you for that.
Thank you.
Huge appreciation.
That really means so much to me, because some days it's hard to live in this body. Some days, I'll look fine. We talked about this before. It's deceiving because I look fine, and every day I struggle, every single day, with my health, and then all this other stuff on top of it.
Right.
So really getting a lot of clarity on why I'm doing what I'm doing. So when you asked, what's your motivation? It's like coming back to, I'm worthy.
Yeah.
I'm worthy.
Oh man, yeah, that's such a core issue for me. That's such a perfect little capper on everything. So Susan, before we close the interview, I wanted to ask you: do you have one more thing that you'd like to share that sparks up your own creative fires, a ritual or a practice or anything, some inspiration?
Oh. One thing, this is really, I think about this all the time when you ask this question, when I see on your website, is this is just something I want to share that goes way back for my whole creative career, is when you're really stuck and you are needing to be creative, especially in an artistic way, whether it's any kind of artistic creative way. I learned this trick way back when. I would have to be creative under pressure all the time. And I learned, and this really spans everything that we're talking about, I actually kind of mentioned it, is when you need to be creative under pressure, because a lot of us do, is to not look at it through your own eyes. Whatever it is that you're being asked to do, so you can span here from an actual artistic project to a life situation. And I never really thought about it like this, but to step back and say, either if I was looking at this from for the first time, how would I approach it? Because sometimes we have so much information, we're basing our decisions on like old stuff. Or just, if I was someone else, how would I approach this? Whether it's a man or a woman or somebody you admire or just somebody different, has really helped me over the years in the creative process to, just like that, I can get into a project and just completely switch directions. And it's been interesting because I said when I've had that experience, when I can look at myself as if I'm someone else,
right,
I'm able to apply more practical principles to myself of being kinder and treating myself better. So it kind of spans the gamut there. But
oh, that's awesome.
Trick.
I love that trick. I'm going to try that today. Well, Susan, it has been just such a treat, as always, to talk with you. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom and your big heart. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm so happy to be here, and you inspire me as well. And as you know, I have a big crush on you.
Thank you. Let's do it again.
Sounds good.
All right.